If it's Monday, President Biden arrives in Lithuania for a wartime meeting of NATO nations, saying now is not the time for Ukraine to join the alliance, warning it could draw the U.S. into a full-blown war with Russia. Plus, countdown to Iowa, the start of the Republican presidential primary contest is now officially on the calendar, leaving Ron DeSantis in a crowded field of contenders just 6 months to try to catch up to frontrunner Donald Trump. And extreme weather and climate concerns. Historic rainfall in the Northeast as a brutal and historic heat wave scorches the Southwest with no relief in sight for millions. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington. As the White House and much of the world have their sights set on Lithuania, where President Biden arrived today ahead of a wartime meeting of NATO countries, the summit could have major implications for the U.S., the West, and Ukraine, which is lobbying to join the defensive pact amid its war against Russia. Facing international and even some domestic pressure, the president this weekend was clear that he believes Ukraine should not be allowed into the alliance, at least not yet.
I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO, but here's the deal. I spent, as you know, a great deal of time trying to hold NATO together because I believe Putin has had an overwhelming objective from the time he launched 185,000 troops into Ukraine, and that was to break NATO. He was confident, in my view, and many of the intelligence community, he was confident he could break NATO. So holding NATO together is really critical.
The president's comments come as the U.S. announced it will be sending some controversial weapons to Ukraine. They're called cluster munitions. These are small bombs that can explode after battles, sometimes injuring or killing civilians. Ahead of the summit, President Biden defended that decision, warning Ukraine was at risk of running out of ammunition.
But it was not an easy decision, and we're not signatories to that agreement, but it took me a while to be convinced to do it. But the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop the Russians now keep them from stopping the Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't. And I think they needed them.
Now, according to a White House official, President Biden discussed cluster munitions with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak today in London, where the president began the day. He also met with King Charles for the first time since his coronation. It all comes amid another surprise development in the war following last month's rebellion inside Russia. The Kremlin has now confirmed Vladimir Putin met with mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin just days after Prigozhin's short-lived mutiny. Joining me now is Ali Rafa at the White House. Kelly Kobiea is on the ground in Ukraine, and Matt Bradley is covering that meeting between Putin and Prigozhin from London. Ali, I want to start with you. Some big news. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Kristen, just minutes ago, we heard from the NATO Secretary General who announced that an agreement had been made after we saw these conditions set by Turkish President Erdogan, saying essentially that if NATO wanted his support for Sweden's membership, Turkey would have to be accepted into the European Union, something that has been opposed for decades now. And that really was thought to throw a wrench in what was supposed to be many discussions at this summit in Lithuania to really rally for Sweden's membership. Remember, it was supposed to happen weeks ago with Finland, and because of opposition from Turkey and Hungary, that was postponed. We have a new statement from the president reacting to this big decision. Just a few minutes ago, he says in part, quote, "I welcome the statement issued by Turkey, Sweden, and the NATO Secretary General this evening, including the commitment by President Erdogan." And he adds, "I stand ready to work with President Erdogan in Turkey on enhancing defense and deterrence in the Euro-Atlantic area." It's unclear, Kristen, whether Erdogan was able to negotiate that EU agreement, because before this we had heard from the Secretary General saying that NATO and EU are two separate entities. They shouldn't be linked at all. These conditions have nothing to do with each other, essentially. So until we find that out, really the details of this agreement, so far it seems like this was a very positive progression, a very positive advancement, and it seems like this deal to get Sweden past the finish line seems finalized, Kristen.
Yeah, it was just an extraordinary about-face by Turkey. The leadership there staunchly opposed until, of course, NATO Secretary General tweeted that out. Why is it critical for the summit to reach this deal now, Ali, and what else are you tracking that's on the agenda there?
Yeah, well, this really put the president and the United States sort of in an awkward position, because the United States and U.S. officials have said that they support Turkey's membership into the European Union, but they've also added that they really have nothing to do with the situation and the decision is not up to them. So this decision happening now really takes a load off of the president as he prepares to meet with Erdogan tomorrow and have these discussions, and it really takes this topic off of sort of his to-do list when he meets with Erdogan, because there are so many other things that the president wants to focus on during this NATO summit. We've talked about that focus specifically on President Zelensky's campaign to have Ukraine become a member of NATO. Remember, he's hoping for at least the framework of a deal to come out of this summit. But we've heard the president, as you played in that soundbite there, saying Ukraine is not ready. Other leaders of NATO allies have said as long as Ukraine is at war with Russia, this should just be not on the table, at the risk of having Russian aggression towards those Western allied countries for supporting Ukraine. The big question now is, in lieu of that NATO membership, that agreement, what sort of security compromise or deal could be made to help Ukraine defend itself while this war is still in effect? So the president is trying to really do this delicate dance of rallying support among these NATO allies while we're seeing divisions already, not just on that NATO membership of Ukraine, but also on that controversial decision you mentioned there for these cluster munitions to be sent to Ukraine, Kristen.
Yeah, Allie, let me follow up with you on that point, because in a letter to the president, 19 progressive Democrats actually condemned the decision to send those cluster bombs to Ukraine. What is the White House saying about this backlash from some members within his own party?
Yeah, the president facing backlash not just from these world leaders, these NATO allies, but also from members of his own party here in the United States. And while this pushback from these progressives, while it is rare, it wasn't all too surprising, because we had seen these progressive members of Congress speak out against the use of these cluster munitions for months now. They had even tried to get the president to sign off on a ban within the U.S. military for using these cluster munitions. So the administration, the president, is standing by this decision, defending this decision, saying really the alternative to not send these cluster munitions just wasn't an option, that these cluster munitions will help Ukraine stay in the fight while they still struggle during their counteroffensive, Kristen.
Ali Rafa, thank you for that. Kelly Kobiaya, let me turn to you. President Biden there, as Ali just said, defending his decision, saying, look, Ukraine is running out of ammunition. Take us inside the thinking inside Ukraine. How concerned are they about the West's ability to continue to provide ammo, given how controversial this move was?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big concern. This is an artillery-heavy war. They are using a lot of artillery in order to try to make gains on the battlefield right now. We've described those battlefield conditions, the months that the Russians have had to really dig in, create those trench defenses, as well as the minefields, the razor wire, the tank traps. This is a long-range, hard war where both sides are firing an awful lot of artillery. Ukraine doesn't have really its own domestic supply. They're trying to ramp that up, but that takes time. So they're very heavily dependent on allies to provide those munitions. The stocks in the U.S., we understand, are running a little low. The stocks here in Ukraine are running low. So you can't fight this war. The Ukrainians can't fight this war without that firepower. Kristen, we've even heard it from soldiers, wounded soldiers returning from the front line, saying that it's so painful to watch their fellow soldiers fall, get injured and killed when they feel like they don't have the resources to fire back. So this decision to send cluster munitions to bridge that gap, as the president said, between in that time it's going to take to build up other types of munitions so that the Ukrainians have some sort of firepower to continue this counteroffensive. And I should also note, Kristen, these weapons are very controversial, but the Ukrainians say they won't be used in urban areas. It will also help them, quite frankly, on the battlefield, this type of munition, because of the way it deploys. When you're talking about trench warfare and being able to inflict casualties on the other side, men who are in the trenches, they're somewhat protected from other types of munitions. But those cluster munitions, they break apart, they form these, they release these bomblets, and they scatter down over a wider area. You don't have to have precise targeting, and you can inflict a larger number of casualties with those bomblets dropping into the trenches. And the Ukrainians are thinking this may be a tool that can sort of push them a little bit farther along in their effort to manage this counteroffensive, Kristen.
And of course raises some real concerns about the state of that counteroffensive. Kelly, Matt, let me turn to you. All of this going on against the backdrop of we're learning about that meeting between Putin and Prigozhin. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I can't tell you very much. The fact is that we all heard about this. We're looking at this kind of through a peephole. Everything that was just said by Dmitry Peskov, and he's the spokesperson for the Kremlin. He said that this meeting happened 5 days after that bloody mutiny that was launched by Prigozhin, that it included, by invitation of Putin to the Kremlin, some 35 leaders from the Wagner Group. Now, the Wagner Group, as we've said, is a mercenary group that is essentially owned by Prigozhin, who is an oligarch and very close to Vladimir Putin. And it was on June 27th that he launched this mutiny, essentially threatening to storm Moscow. Now, we heard from Dmitry Peskov today telling reporters publicly that he wasn't going to give a lot of details, but he did say that basically Putin gave an assessment of what was going on the battlefield, Wagner's performance on the battlefield, and that then he said that Prigozhin and his men said that they were going to be totally dedicated to Putin, which is a really intriguing comment coming from Dmitry Peskov, especially since only days earlier, Prigozhin had launched thousands of his men toward Moscow, threatening essentially to try to unseat the military leadership there. So we really don't know what has been going on behind closed doors. It was a 3-hour meeting. It seems pretty likely that it was a little more heated than what was being described by Dmitry Peskov. But again, this is a bizarre and unexpected set of events, and you can kind of file this, Kristen, under raises more questions than answers.
Well, very quickly, Matt, I mean, we have been talking about, since we learned about this failed attempted coup, just how strong is Vladimir Putin right now? What does your reporting tell you about his hold on power in Russia? How stable is it right now?
Well, as far as we know, it looks as though Putin is essentially still in control. But this was a massive chink in his armor. This was the most formidable challenge that Putin has faced during his 20 years in power up until now. So no matter how much Putin is able to project his power through the levers of government in Moscow, in the Kremlin, everybody saw this. Everybody knows that this occurred. So there is that sense that Putin has been weakened, even if he's still gone about the business of trying to show strength. He hasn't done a couple of important things that a lot of people who were watching the Kremlin were expecting. He hasn't shaken up his top military leadership, those people who Prigozhin was especially very vocally, bitterly opposed to. He has not fired the two men who were in charge of the entire military, the Ministry of Defense, Shoigu and Gerasimov, who was one of the people who was in charge of that effort in Ukraine, that attack, or the entire invasion. So essentially, Prigozhin didn't get his wish. Putin is still in control, and it looks as though he hasn't bent to Prigozhin's main demands. Kristen?
Fascinating reporting, as always, Matt Bradley. Thank you so much, Kelly Kobiea beforehand, and of course, Ali Rafa. Appreciate it. I now want to bring in Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., Oksana Markarova. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen, for having me.
I want to start off just by getting your reaction, of course, to President Biden saying that it's premature for Ukraine to join NATO and that there's not unanimity about it. What is your reaction?
Well, let's look at, how ready we are for NATO. And there are 3 levels of that readiness. One is values and democracy and freedom. And I think that's where Ukraine is not only ready, we're fighting for these values on the battlefield right now. And we always fought for our democracy throughout a number of revolutions and in our recent history. On the second level of the readiness of our army and armed forces, I think also the whole world is seeing how our brave defenders are repelling the much larger army, much brutal army, Russian army. So we're using a number of NATO equipment. We're battle tested, and I think there is no. And President Biden said it himself, that our armed forces are, at a very ready stage. With regard to all the reforms, we have started the reforms in 2013 after we finally got rid of the Russian-led, owned government in Ukraine. And we've done a number of reforms that led to us being candidate to the European Union. And one day, we're positive, will also lead us into full membership in NATO. So, look, we understand that there are a lot of reforms we still have to do. We are doing them even now on the battlefield. And during this time, we implemented 13 annual national plans, like NATO calls them, and all of them were positively assessed. So we are ready to work toward this membership. We are talking about the open door and actually an invitation.
And I hear your measured optimism that this will happen eventually, but what is your sense of the timeline, and what if you don't see any progress in that direction in 3 to 6 months? When do you expect there to be some movement around this, Ambassador?
Look, the first time the doors of NATO opened to us was in 2008. We have been very patient since then, but not just patient, working towards it. And I think on the timeline, we have to ask all the NATO members, not Ukraine. I mean, we have this in our hearts, we have it in our constitution, and we are working very actively on the reforms that are needed for that. But of course, NATO is a family. It requires consensus decision. All of them have to agree, and we will work tirelessly for tomorrow's summit, but also right after that. So, look, this is a value choice. It's not something that we can either choose it or not. For us, this is the choice of democracy and values.
And Ambassador, as you know, there's been some discussion about providing Ukraine with the same type of security guarantees as the U.S. provides to Israel, for example. Would that go far enough for Ukrainians, or does that stop short of what ultimately you would want to see?
Look, I don't know. It's still under discussion, so I'm not in a position to comment it. Of course, we would welcome security guarantees. In no way it's a replacement, right? So we see our future in European Union, in NATO. That's a strategic choice for Ukraine. And I believe that we can also add a lot both to European Union and NATO. With regard to guarantees, I mean, of course, we really appreciate all the support that we're getting now, all the weapons support, all the budget support. And I especially want to thank President Biden for this decision to provide us with cluster munitions. They are real help right now. We are fighting on our territory. We will use them very responsibly. But the alternative is killing, torture, and rape of our people who are still under occupation, and Russians who are targeting civilians.
Let me follow up with you on that point. As you know, there are real human rights concerns about these cluster munitions. How concerned are you that civilians ultimately will get hurt or lose their lives, that Ukrainians could get hurt or lose their lives?
Let me tell you, there are a number of human rights concerns that we have in Ukraine because Russians have been specifically targeting civilians since the beginning of this full-fledged war. We have seen cluster munitions, we have seen phosphorus bombs, we have seen targeting of hospitals, residential areas, which goes every day. And today we woke up to the news of a center where the World Central Kitchen feeding station was in Orikhiv, and the Russians specifically targeted that. So the alternative to that is not peaceful life without mines. We are the most mined country, but Ukraine will use it in a very effective and responsible way. We have shown already how even we're liberating our territories, we are not attacking our civilians. We're trying to do it in a more difficult way, and it's going to be the same with this.
And Ambassador, how concerned are you that the West's support for Ukraine will not last? And how concerned are you about the counteroffensive, the strength of the counteroffensive right now?
Well, I know that our brave defenders, it's difficult, but they are doing everything possible and impossible, and I'm positive that it will be successful. We just need a little bit more weapons for that, and we need more support. And with regards to support, I talk to ordinary Americans every day, and I know that they understand the stakes in this war is not just for Ukraine. They understand that it's about democracy.
But
it's about
Ambassador, you have heard some Republicans already push back and say, look, we cannot be a blank check for Ukraine. When you hear that kind of language, given the state of the counteroffensive right now, does it make you nervous?
Well, first of all, we never received a blank check. We are reporting on every dollar that we are receiving. We are very diligent about it. We are very grateful for all the support. Second, I want to remind, in 1994, we got rid of the third largest nuclear arsenal in exchange for the guarantees, which turned out to be assurances. And, now that enabled, us not to have the nuclear weapons, but in a sense, Russia attacked us in 2014 and now in 2022. And plus, the implications of this, again, I think it's in the national interest of Ukraine, but also in the national interest of the United States, to show that democracies can support themselves, can defend themselves, and that international law still exists, that one brutal aggressor, nuclear power, cannot simply offend unprovokedly a peaceful neighbor. And this is what happened.
Ambassador, just finally, do you expect President Zelensky to appear at the NATO summit in person to plead for more support, more aid in person, as we have seen him do recently?
Well, we will see tomorrow. It's just days before that. So, as you know, I'm our ambassador here, so I know when my president is coming here. But we definitely look forward to very constructive discussions in NATO.
Not ruling out the possibility, I hear.
Yes.
Okay. Ambassador Markarova, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate it. Coming up, Ready, Set, Caucus. The date is set and the clock is now counting down to Iowa and the first contest of the Republican presidential primary, as a crowded field now has just 6 months to catch up to the frontrunner, Donald Trump. Plus, feeling the heat, I'll talk to California's top climate advisor about the heat wave baking the Southwest and how officials are preparing for even hotter days ahead. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. You can now mark your calendars for the first contest of the Republican presidential primary. Iowa Republicans announced this weekend that their caucus will take place on January 15th. That's a Monday, and it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That means Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the rest of the Republican field have 6 months to make up some serious ground on frontrunner Donald Trump before voting begins. DeSantis has been facing repeated questions recently about his lackluster poll numbers and his campaign's slow start. Here he is this morning trying to dispel doubts about his candidacy.
I think it's pretty clear that the media does not want me to be the candidate. I think that they've tried to create narratives that somehow the race is over. This is going to be a state-by-state contest. We've worked really hard to build the type of organization in places like Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina that you need to actually be able to win these early contests, and we're going to continue doing that. We got a lot of work, but we've had very, very favorable response, and we're going to keep building off that momentum.
Joining me now on set is Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today, Kimberly Atkins-Storr, senior opinion writer and columnist for the Boston Globe Opinion and an NBC News contributor, and former Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Charlie Dent. Thanks to all of you for being here. Really appreciate it. So, Susan, let me start with you. I mean, he's blaming it on the media. Look, he's got 6 months. At what point does Ron DeSantis really have to start to worry that he's not gaining enough traction?
I think about now might be the time he could start to worry. I mean, 6 months is a long time. But when you're attacking the media and the polls, that means you are really in a position of some peril, I mean, some trouble. People can make up that kind of difference, of course, and a lot of things will happen in a period of 6 months. And he's been very successful raising money, but he hasn't been successful in building support, and he has also not been successful in making a dent in Donald Trump's support.
Well, and that's the key, Kimberly. Where are the gettable votes? He keeps making the argument that he is the candidate who's most appealing to independents, and yet he seems to be trying his best to run to the right of Donald Trump. So does he have a clear strategy? Are you clear on what his strategy is to get those gettable votes?
Am I clear? No, but as the best I can guess is that he's trying to position himself. If Trump beats himself, if he somehow falls, if somehow these indictments or something else start really ticking into his poll numbers, that he's sort of the heir apparent, right? He's running to the right. He's trying to be as Trumpian as possible to try to claim that and maybe put some space. He's still saying, you know, he's number two. You're two back 30 points. And maybe he can put some space in between that. But so far, Trump's support has been so inelastic after indictments, after all of the news that has happened. It's hard to see how that strategy works.
Yeah, I mean, he's boasting some of his best fundraising since these indictments. Charlie, let me turn to you. You talk about the numbers. 49% of GOP voters want to see Trump continue as head of the party. When you have all of these other candidates, how is this not a repeat of what we witnessed in 2016?
Well, I think all these other candidates are hoping for the Trump implosion, which has not happened and may not happen again this time. And they all seem to know, too, that with whatever the number is, 12 or 13 people running, that they're splitting the anti-Trump vote in far too many directions, that this field is going to have to become much more narrow at some point. And so I'm not sure what their strategy is, other than they're hoping, you know, to be the next guy. And many of them are still running as if they're trying to win second place, which is what happened in 2016. And frankly, you know, all this time and energy in Iowa, I'm not sure it's a good idea. From what I can tell, I still remember President Santorum and President Huckabee and another. Nobody does well there.
Well, and how about all of the focus on a former Florida governor, Jeb Bush, Kimberly, who was supposed to be the strongest person to take on Trump back in 2016.
Right.
We know how that story ended. I mean, it seems like Governor DeSantis is kind of putting his eggs in that basket that, yes, I've served as governor. He talks about his big, bold wins in the state.
Yeah.
And yet that doesn't seem to be enough.
So far, it certainly is not enough. Look, we learned from 2016 that conventional wisdom goes out of the door now when we're talking about Republican primaries. So anything can happen. And so, you know, sort of applying the same conventional wisdom doesn't work. But so far, he's not making that inroads. Now, we are far out. He can change, pivot, we'll see what happens. But it seems when you are the next front runner after Trump out the gate, it seems that that's the worst place to be at the beginning of this point.
But, you know, when you think about comparing this to 2016, this is a different Republican Party than it was in 2016. Yeah. It is a Trumpian Republican Party. He has redefined the GOP in his own image, which makes him even harder to beat in these primaries.
Well, and of course, the next big thing we're watching, Charlie, are the debates. Ron DeSantis kind of saying this is going to be the moment when things really start to turn around. We're not expecting former President Trump to be at the first and second and possibly any of the debates. But could the debates be a real opening for these candidates if Trump is not on stage?
Well, we'll see which one of these other candidates breaks through. I mean, one of these guys wants to ascend to the top of the pile to take on Trump. And right now, you know, DeSantis is in the strongest position, although he has not gained much traction. So the point of the debates is who's going to be the Trump alternative? And then if you do find a Trump alternative, can you get these other candidates to agree that this is the alternative? But as long as, you know, Trump can win with a 30% or 35% plurality, I don't see the path for the other candidates unless we get this field down to one or two candidates.
Well, we're talking about 13 candidates, Kimberly. Do you expect all 13 of them to actually make it to Iowa in 6 months?
No, they won't all make it. And you have to understand, even though Trump has just shy of the half, to your point about 30-some-odd% plurality, to think that you can be, even if you are the last non-Trump candidate standing, that you can garner all 50% of that remaining vote is just really unrealistic. Everybody is not supporting the bit of support that each of these candidates have, all for the same reason.
I want to talk about some of the messaging that we're hearing from these candidates. Let's start with Ron DeSantis, who taking aim at the Justice Department. Take a look.
We will end the weaponization of government. And that's, of course, a new FBI director on day one. That's a difference between me and Donald Trump. He says the jury's still out on FBI Director Wray. I think you need a new start on day one. We're going to clean house at the Department of Justice.
This, Susan, is now becoming table stakes, if you will, for GOP candidates. A lot of them, not all of them. What do you make of this, and What's the potential fallout of this type of language?
I think it's dangerous. We have most of the Republican candidates talking about the weaponization of the Justice Department because it has gone after Donald Trump on things like his alleged abuse of classified and sensitive documents. It goes to undermine whatever public support there remains in institutions of government. That's an important ingredient of democracy, that people trust that the Justice Department will generally be fair, be representing their interest. And this makes, I think, harder for Americans to feel confident in that.
Kimberly, as the lawyer at this table, your take when you hear some of this language.
Oh, I agree completely with Susan. It's extremely dangerous. It really undermines the rule of law. But it's also politically puzzling because that's such a Trumpian attack, you know, go after the FBI because they're after me, and that means that they're really after Republican voters. But if you're saying it's Trump's FBI, what point are you even making there? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, you know, politically, again, I agree with you that this is a complete and total mistake on DeSantis' part to go after the FBI. He might as well, he's validating Trump's arguments. He should be talking about Donald Trump right now, saying, yeah, he's under 2 indictments for paying off a porn star and for mishandling classified material.
This is what Christie is saying.
Yeah, he should be saying that and saying he's unfit. He's too big a risk. That's the argument. Not that Donald Trump is a victim. You know, it seems that DeSantis is running on the same politics of grievance and victimization as is Trump, when he should be taking him on and saying this is why he shouldn't be the president.
The other big issue, obviously, that is going to loom large over this election cycle, and we saw it in the midterms, is the issue of abortion. Chuck had a chance to talk to Doug Burgum, former governor of North Dakota, over the weekend. Let's take a look at that exchange.
You would not sign any federal legislation at all, whether it set the line at 24 weeks or 6 weeks?
No, I wouldn't, because it should be left to the states. I believe in states' rights. And I believe that the President of the United States has got a defined set of things they're supposed to work on, and it's not every culture war topic. These are things that are left to the state. As president, things that you're supposed to focus on, things like the economy, like energy policy, which is completely tied to national security, and part of national security is the border. And these are things that the president right now, President Biden, has completely abdicated his responsibility on.
Charlie, Governor Burgum there very clearly with a message made to appeal to moderates.
Well, right. I've been saying this for years, that the Republican Party needs to moderate on this issue, that someday there would be consequences to these abortion votes. And now here we are. It seems, and by the way, I was the last guy in the House to vote against defunding Planned Parenthood, and I voted against the 20-week abortion ban, the only one. Bottom line is the Republican Party needs a message. They don't know what to do. Some of them are talking about a federal law. Others are talking, as the governor is, about returning it back to the states. Neither argument, frankly, is winning, because they're on the wrong side of public opinion. They need to come down on a position that is sustainable.
And Susan, I should say he's still the current governor, but his message is so different than what we're hearing from a former President Trump, who says on abortion, this issue has to be spoken about properly because Republicans, many of them, don't speak about it properly. In acknowledgement, Republicans are struggling with this very critical issue.
Nothing makes Republicans more nervous than the issue of abortion. And they saw in the last midterms how powerful it can be in the wake of overturning Roe v. Wade. And there is every possibility the candidate like Ron DeSantis, who signed a 6-week abortion ban in Florida, will have trouble dealing with this issue and appealing to moderate voters if he is the nominee.
Kimberly, very quickly, last word.
Yeah, no, that's right. Every time abortion's been on the ballot, abortion has won. Abortion access has won. And that's one of the biggest problems that Republicans are facing, not only going into 2024, but beyond.
Okay, well, one of the issues we're watching very closely. Thank you so much for a great discussion, Susan, Kimberly, and Charlie. Appreciate it. Up next, it's the economy. Could Biden's big bet on what he calls Bidenomics backfire if a cooling economy grows colder heading into 2024? You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. The White House is betting big on Bidenomics as the president's 2024 campaign heats up and tries to tackle some lackluster approval ratings and dour views from voters on the future of the economy. The administration hoping to make the case the economy is strong, thanks in part to what it views as key economic legislation, including the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act. But as President Biden seeks to sell his economic vision, the question remains, will voters buy it? Joining me now on set is Amy Walter, publisher and editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report.
Hey,
thank you for being here, Amy. Great to see you. So, Bidenomics. Is this smart strategy or is it risky strategy? Could it backfire?
I don't think they have any choice but to go head on an issue that we know is front and center. Voters, when asked what their top issue is, point not just to the economy, but day-to-day costs. How much, obviously, inflation still impacting voters' opinions about the economy. Things are getting better. There's no doubt about that in terms of the direction that things are going, both in opinions about the economy and the fact that inflation is lessening. We have record low unemployment. But the opinion about Biden's handling of the economy, as you pointed out, just remains really low. And I think a lot of that has to do with something that has been a factor for the last few years and is only getting more relevant, which is partisanship. Think back when you don't have to even go back to the 80s with Ronald Reagan, but go back to even the Clinton era. Bill Clinton was impeached in 1998. His approval rating was 60%, in large part because people said, yeah, I don't like what Bill Clinton did, but I like the economy, and I'm going to give him credit for that. Now, that doesn't happen anymore. If you don't like the party of the president, you're not going to, even if the economy is good, you're not going to give that president credit.
You're unforgiving. Let's look at the polling. We just had it up. His job approval ratings at 42%, 54% disapprove. Look at his economy approval rating. 41% of registered voters say they approve of his handling of the economy. I mean, how tough are those numbers?
Yeah, those numbers could bump up a little bit or go down a little bit, depending, as you said, what the economy starts to look like as we get closer and closer to the election. So I think if you're the Biden campaign, you definitely want to go on the offense. If you notice, the sale of Bidenomics isn't just about how good the economy is, it's how bad Republicans are. He talked as much in that speech he gave, I guess it was over a week ago, about how Republicans were too focused on trickle-down economics and tax cuts for the wealthy, trying to make a case similar to what President Obama did in his reelection in 2012, which was, yeah, maybe the economy's getting better. It's not great yet. But if we put it in the hands of Mitt Romney, he's going to look out only for those who are the wealthiest and best connected. And the Obama campaign made the case that they were looking out for average Americans.
Well, and that is the question at the end of the day. If, in fact, former President Trump does win the nomination, in a head-to-head matchup, President Biden still wins at this point.
That's right.
By a little bit. One of the other big issues for voters, abortion. We were just talking about this. I mean, to what extent does he run the risk of over-indexing on the economy, not talking about those types of issues enough?
Oh, I don't think you're going to see that, and because I think this campaign is really clear, at least at this point, in making the case that this is going to be as much about Donald Trump, should he be the nominee, as it is about a re-election of an incumbent, making the case that, you know, we've already been through this, President Trump. We know what we're going to get. And think about this. Donald Trump's approval ratings on the economy when he was president were pretty good. Yeah. And yet his party obviously lost the House, the Senate, and he obviously lost re-election.
Amy, the other big issue for President Biden is not just the economy, but his fitness for office. And I think we have some polls there as well. You have about 68% of voters who say they have major or moderate concerns. He's been trying to tackle this head on, even joking about his age. Right. Is that a smart approach? What do you anticipate we'll see from him?
And that's why I don't think you can completely separate opinions about how Biden is handling the economy with that poll number right there. Opinions about the president are also baked into how well they think he's currently handling the economy or how well he will continue to handle the economy should he be president. If 68% of voters are saying, look, I don't know that he maybe has the mental or physical fitness to do this for another 4 years, will another 1 point drop in inflation change that perspective? I don't really think so.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you about a big event here in Washington on Wednesday night, the Congressional Women's Softball Game. You're going to be playing in it. Tell us about it, Amy.
That's right. This is the 15th year. Here we are, 15th annual women members of the media up against a bipartisan group of women members of Congress. It is the only such event where there's a bipartisan coalition of members. It's on Wednesday night. If you're in Washington, D.C., come on down. Tickets are $10. All of it goes to support the Young Survival Coalition, which is a nonprofit dedicated to younger women with breast cancer. There's breast cancer awareness that is a major focus of this game. And over the years, over these 15 years, we've raised over $3 million for helping younger women who've had breast cancer and ensuring that young women do get tested.
A critical cause and such a fun night.
It's such a fun night. Thank you. Of course, you're cheering for the media.
Of course, we're cheering for the media. Of course. We look forward to it. Thank you. And in that spirit, in today's Meet the Press moment, we are highlighting the power of sports to bring attention to issues off the field. This weekend, U.S. soccer superstar Megan Rapinoe, you probably heard this, she announced her plans to retire. She'll compete in her final World Cup tournament with the national team later this month and finish out the season with her team, the OL Reign. Chuck spoke with Rapinoe in 2019, fresh off her second World Cup title, about the importance of athletes using their platforms for activism.
What opportunity do you see here? I mean, do you see it's like, okay, we got the attention. I am going to make these points. I'm going to make these. I am going to do this activism.
I think the opportunity is in everyone's exhaustion of the fighting and the negative, and our team has managed to make people proud again, to capture people's interest, to make them want to do something. I think people are asking the question, how can we rally around this team? And in that, really what the team stands for, whether it's equal pay or racial equality or LGBTQ rights. I think we've just managed to give people hope. And with that, now we need to do the next step, which is to actually take the progress step.
Welcome back. Millions of Americans in the Northeast remain under flood alerts today, with Vermont experiencing what officials called serious, life-threatening flooding. Police there released this dramatic video showing high floodwaters rushing over a dam, and nearly 10 inches of rain fell in New York's Hudson Valley on Sunday, a number the region usually gets across the whole summer. Flash floods rushed into residential areas, turning backyards into rivers. Meanwhile, the western part of the country is still contending with dangerously high heat and scorching temperatures. 74 million Americans remain under heat alerts today, and this all comes amid renewed concern from experts about the rise in temperatures globally after Earth experienced its hottest day on record last week. Joining me now to discuss this, Senior Climate Advisor to California Governor Gavin Newsom, Lauren Sanchez. She was also previously an advisor to U.S. Climate Envoy John Kerry and was on the State Department's team that negotiated the Paris Climate Agreement. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Kristen.
So let's talk about this heat that you all are experiencing out west. How is California's climate office dealing with this extended period of extreme heat, which is obviously a potential danger to so many?
Well, to put it simply, Kristen, the planet is running a fever. The governor takes extreme heat incredibly seriously, and we know that it is the most deadly extreme weather impact here facing communities across the state. Just last year, we updated our extreme heat action plan, which really guides an all-of-government approach to planning and preparing for these heat waves. We are launching this week a campaign, a public awareness campaign, to help Californians know how to stay cool throughout the heat wave and know what resources are available to them. I would ask Californians to go to heatreadyca.gov, where you can find cooling centers and tips on how to stay cool throughout the heat wave. But, it comes down to three simple things. Make sure you are staying hydrated, staying cool, and staying connected. Listen to your local officials. Check in on those, elderly and vulnerable community members of yours. And,
That communication is so critical, particularly with your loved ones who may be seniors. Let me ask you, because your role is so unique. You're one of the first dedicated climate officers in the entire country. We know that the governor just signed an infrastructure package into law. It included money for climate goals. Did that include heat provisions?
That does, Kristen. Thank you so much for asking. So the governor just earlier today signed in our state budget into law, which is $310 billion for the world's fourth largest economy. included in that is $52.3 billion for our climate budget, which is really an unprecedented amount for state to be funding and to be making these critical investments to tackle climate change. It both includes really critical investments to achieve our goals like 100% clean energy and 100% electric vehicles, but also to make sure that we're making the investments to protect Californians from the extreme heat wave coming up. It includes $404 million for those cooling centers I mentioned, to make sure that we are pulling asphalt out of elementary schools and replacing that with green, cool play yards for students to stay cool, and making sure that we are planting trees and ensuring shading structures for outdoor workers and other vulnerable communities across the state. It also includes investments in wildfire and forest resilience, in drought and water resilience. You mentioned the Northeast and what they're experiencing right now, and I have to say our hearts go out to everyone across the Northeast who, just recently they were dealing with the wildfire smoke, and here in California we're so familiar with the harmful impacts of those wildfires as well. And in California, we experienced the 3 driest years on record, followed by the 3 wettest weeks on record. This weather whiplash really means that we need to be prioritizing those critical investments in protecting our communities from all of these cumulative impacts that they are facing day in and day out.
And Lauren, I don't have to tell you, but poor and underserved communities get hit hardest when you are dealing with this type of extreme weather. What is the state's role in helping to protect them? What is being done to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks in this moment?
Well, the governor, throughout his climate agenda, likes to lead, or has led, with equity and environmental justice. That means targeting our pollution reduction efforts, our protection efforts into those communities who are low income, communities of color who we know are most vulnerable to these climate impacts and are also facing other cumulative pollution burdens based on historic inequities that they are facing. If you look across our climate budget, each of those tailored investments is really targeting the most vulnerable communities who we know are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. Historically, over half of those investments have gone directly into our disadvantaged communities across the state. It's a real point of pride for the governor.
All right, Lauren Sanchez, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen.
Still to come, inside America's secret war on terror, we've got a behind-the-scenes look at how U.S. forces are deploying all around the globe on covert missions to combat terrorism. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Most Americans probably don't know the true extent of our country's war on terror. A report last year by the Brennan Center found that the U.S. has fought secret wars in at least 20 countries over the last 2 decades. In our latest episode of Meet the Press Reports, we took a deep dive into that secret war that's being fought all across the globe, including in Somalia, where U.S. Special Forces are training local military forces to combat terrorists. NBC's Courtney Cubie recently got an unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at how this war is being fought.
Kristen, it's a mission most Americans don't even know is happening. Small, elite teams of U.S. military special operators are fanned out all around the world, working with local partner forces in most cases to battle terror networks. One of the most urgent threats is in Somalia against al-Shabaab. We embedded with U.S. forces training the Danab, elite Somali military troops, as they participated in live fire drills, hand-to-hand combat, and learned how to face their biggest threat from al-Shabaab, roadside bombs or IEDs.
Counter IED training takes place here, which is very important in Somalia.
This is the senior enlisted Navy SEAL in charge of working with the Somali troops. We cannot identify him for security reasons.
IEDs pose a significant problem, so some of our troops provide that support as well. And basic marksmanship, patrolling, tactics, small unit warfare tactics.
Officials here say as many as 2 of every 5 of these new Danab soldiers will be wounded or killed in combat. About 350 recruits graduated today. They're now Somali Special Forces, and dozens of these men and women will be on the front lines in the battle against al-Shabaab in a matter of days. Now, in addition to the training, the U.S. military also carries out airstrikes in support of the Somali military. We had a really rare opportunity to speak with the U.S. Navy SEAL who makes the decisions every single day whether to conduct those airstrikes or not. He said the reality is he has to turn down more airstrikes than he approves because of the concern about civilian casualties. But just to give you a sense, there was one of those airstrikes over the weekend. It killed 10 al-Shabaab fighters. It was in support of the Somali military, who were under direct threat from that al-Shabaab group. Kristen?
Just an extraordinary report there by Courtney Cubie. Thank you, Courtney, for that. The entire episode of Meet the Press Reports, The Secret War on Terror, is available to stream right now on Peacock or YouTube. And that does it for us this hour. I'm back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now. NBC News Now coverage continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.